Hi everyone, I'm Yosha. I'm the founder of MeMeraki, and today we'll be speaking to Sonam Kalra.
Hi,
There she is. Hi Sonam.
how are you?
Nice to meet you finally. I know we've chatted so much over Instagram, but we're finally meeting as much as possible in person
I
digitally.
know.
Lovely to have you with us today. We've got enough people joining in. So I'll just quickly introduce, our session and would love to get started chatting with you then. So hi everyone, I'm Yosha. I'm the founder of MeMeraki. And for those of you who might not know us, because a lot of the community from Sonam's platform might be joining us today as well, we call ourselves a culture tech platform. We work with heritage master artists and artisans from across India with live workshops, masterclasses, and also retailing their work and taking it global to a global audience across the world. And just about 2.5 months ago, we started this series of conversations that we called Heart Talks, where we love to chat with people who inspire us, people who are exploring the connection with art in very, very different ways. And, to that effect, we wanted to chat with Sonam. We dive deeper into her work during the course of the conversation. She's a brilliant musician, but we'd love to get started from the beginning itself, Sonam. If you could, tell us a bit more about what started your journey in music. When did you first realize that you wanted to pursue music as a career?
So very quickly before I start
Yeah.
talking about myself, I want to applaud you for the incredible work you guys do. Honestly, I've been following your page for a while, and I mean, yours is so much more than an Instagram page. It's a movement, and I think that's what's important to document, to archive, to encourage and create new platforms for artists, and to also interpret art, which is seen as traditional, into a contemporary fashion. I think all of the stuff you're doing is absolutely fantastic. So here I am saying, well done.
Thank you so much. Love the mutual admiration.
I'm sounding a bit like this because I have a cold. However, for those of you who think this is a sexy voice, we'll just go ahead anyway.
The voice I always wanted. I wish I could have a voice like that.
So very quickly, I started learning when I was quite young. I started learning Hindustani classical music because my mother thought I had a sort of gift. I never believed I did. I was always interested, but you know how you're sort of, I think most artists are self-effacing. So I just thought that, obviously she's my mother, she's going to like what I do. But that being said, I was always when it came to school, I was always involved in culture in some way, in theater and music and debates. And I love the idea of performing. I was also always the child who wanted to read in the English class the story out loud. So I do think I've had a fascination with voice, with lyric, with literature, with music. So definitely artistically inclined. Also, talking about art and craft, when I was a little girl, I still have two elder sisters, and I used to get all the neighborhood kids together, and I would choreograph like this big performance. I would have 20 children. I would be the director. I would get it all together. And then we would sell tickets to poor parents who didn't have an option to buy their children.
Oh my God, this is deja vu, Sonam, because I have done exactly the same thing in my childhood.
So, I think people like us know we're eventually going to end up in the arts. And I think we used to earn like a princely sum of 20 rupees.
Yeah.
And then
We sold very expensive tickets to our parents. We used to sell our tickets like $50-200 per ticket.
I still remember taking a 1 rupee coin, placing a piece of paper and rubbing a pencil on it. So you got the 1 rupee imprint. And then quite sweetly, I think obviously this was what our parents taught us. We would donate that money to charity. So, we learned to make art a part of the community at a very early age. And that was what was important. And art was for everyone. It was for all the neighborhood kids in some role or the other. It didn't matter that you thought you couldn't. So yes, I started very young. My mother was very interested in the arts. She made sure there was always music playing. So I got a chance to listen to everyone from Harry Belafonte, Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra, to Begum Akhtar, to my sisters who had different taste in music, whether it was, Leonard Cohen, the Beatles. So because I was in the middle of it all, I was the youngest, so I got surrounded by everyone. And I'm really grateful for all of this. I'm grateful for all of the experiences I got in school. But at some point, around the 10th, I gave up because I was studying for my boards, and I went to art school, which was again actually a great thing. When people say to me, Sonam, would you stop singing? And I said, no, but I was assimilating art. And to me, I think I've ever seen, and I think you can see this in my work as well. I don't see the differentiation of like I'm a musician and I do art, or I think all of it. You are an artist, therefore your heart, and you call these heart talks. I think it's so important if you are an artist to have heart. It means you are, no matter what Instagram will tell you, don't be an empath. I think you have to be an empath to be an artist. You have to feel everyone's pain and joy emotion deeply, and you have to feel yours, and you do have to have heightened emotion. Otherwise, if you didn't have heightened emotion, which we keep trying to tone down in ourselves, I don't think that it's necessarily a good thing to keep toning it down. Yes, find a balance, but you have to feel deeply to create art. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to. So this break happened. I joined art school. In art school, I was surrounded by music. Somewhere in the middle of art school, I thought I wanted to get, because everyone sang in art school, in the canteen. And then I thought, yeah, there were a lot of Bengalis in art school as well. And I mean, for them, every recess or lunch break was someone playing the table. And so it was great fun. We did theater in art school. We did a lot of great stuff. And it was 9 to 5 immersion in art. Then I decided to get back to music. I got back to music. I learned for a while from Shubhaji, from Shubha Mudgal.
You did?
I did, yeah.
Didn't know that. Favorite music.
Then my mother got cancer, and that was an interesting point because when I stopped learning, obviously because I wanted her to get well, I then, when I was ready to get back to it a year later, I found I couldn't sing because I was so heartbroken and I'm so traumatized. Then I think I just decided that I wanted to do. It was strange how it came to me. And, again, we're talking about heart talks, and I'll keep coming back to that because I think your title resonated with me also, because I thought of the one thing that I've always listened to, and we'll call it a heart, but I've always listened to my gut and my intuition. I have listened to the voice inside me. So I've always said I have an inner GPS to guide me, and all of us do. We just tend to tune it out because we're so concerned with the voices outside. And how to please people. We spend so much of our time trying to create and do people rather than tell our own stories, which is important. You must tell your own stories. So I think at that point I just said, okay, out of the blue, I'm going to do theater because I needed to find a vent. And I started to do theater. I did some sort of amateur theater in the beginning, and then I had the good fortune to sort of be absorbed into Amal Alana's repertory. Amal Alana is one of the top theater directors in the country, who also interestingly uses a lot of artistic, a lot of art, a lot of literature in her performances. So the first performance of hers that I saw, which was a Gabriel Garcia Marquez novel, which it was translated into the Indian ethos, and it had Rajasthani costumes. But I remember really moved by it because every image on that stage looked like a canvas, like a full, larger than life painting. And I was so moved that I mean, there was this moment, this one image where she was trying to describe this very cruel grandmother. And there were all these 5 women who were playing multiple things. They were playing the grandmother. They were also playing the young girl whose name was Erindira. Now, all the Erindiras came together and they formed this massive mountain of a grandmother. One was the head, and using their Rajasthani costumes, they camouflaged their bodies. One became an arm, the other one became left arm. So you saw this massive mountain of a person on stage who's like 20 feet away from the head, and they were all together to form this one large breathing organism. And her sets were just so minimalist and so impactful. So for me, it was the art of it that moved me, and I worked with. And I think I can safely say, and I say this to her as well, so much of what I learned, and then I did about 4 years or more with her, where we worked on another story about a female actress in Calcutta, one of the first few actresses on the Indian stage called Nati Binodini, and Nati meant actress, Binodini. And now Binodini was a very powerful woman as well. She was someone who broke all the norms of society. In the day, they played all these lofty characters, Shakespearean roles. But at night, they were courtesans in some way. So for that lady to have to come to terms to understanding, am I this lofty character that I play and I'm trying to lift myself out of the dirt? Or am I someone who is this courtesan? Anyway, so what Amal did, I mean, that's like another Instagram talk. But I'm saying, Amal did for me is she taught me some really pertinent lessons during this time. And one of the most pertinent, which I found I was able to use in my music, was that, you know, you have to look, again, I come back to truth. She says that I was so much in search of perfection, and I still am a perfectionist, but I think I've also realized that I have to balance perfection with the more important truth. She said, as long as there is truth in the moment, there will
Yeah.
be beauty, because it will be your truth to tell. And that has really stayed with me. It was such a powerful statement that then I decided that I would find my own voice. I would find my own way. I would tell my own story. I didn't know
Yeah.
how, but I knew that I had to tell my own story. And after I left her, I went back to music. And of course, there were more sort of upheavals personally with my mother passing, and then 2 years later, my father passing. But soon after my mother passed, the Sufi Gospel Project, a year before actually, sorry, I got invited to sing at the Dargah of Sufi Inayat Khan. 2 years before that, I had sort of been drawn to gospel music. And I come from a Sikh family, no one in my family. I didn't even go to a convent school.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but it was this weird moment. I remember walking in the park, when my mother was ill, and I used to keep singing Amazing Grace. And then I just thought, I listened to my heart, and I said, maybe the universe is telling me something. I need to do something with this. So
Yeah.
I just, when I was in Singapore on a holiday once, and I just decided, I was walking past a music school. I said, let me go and ask them if they'll teach me. So I started learning gospel music, and then I started going back to Singapore in breaks of about 3 months. So when I came to Delhi, there was this girl who wanted to sing gospel music, having been trained in Indian classical for most of her life.
Yeah.
Started getting invited to places to sing. And I think I must have been the only solo gospel artist at the time, to my knowledge. And then I got invited to sing gospel music at the Dargah of Sufi Inayat Khan. That again flipped a switch for me, because that was so powerful for me. As it is, I was breaking some norms, and
Yeah.
people always looked at me, what are you doing? And so then there was a Sikh girl who wanted to sing in an seemingly Islamic space, and she was going to sing gospel music.
Yeah.
And for that particular concert, I think my mind started to work, and I thought I need to add some more elements, and that's when the sarangi came in. And at first, it was just all based on intuition
Yeah.
and how I felt. And once I performed it, I realized that there were so many resonances that I started researching it. And a month and a half later, the first concert of the Sufi Gospel Project was born. Now, when
Yeah.
I look back, I'm shocked that I could have done it in a month and a half. But I know
Yeah.
that there was some magic that emerged for me. I know I was lost in it. There would be times I would be singing in my living room, which is where I used to do most of the work in the riyaz, in the dark, and I would suddenly realize that I had been singing when there was light, and it had become dark, and I didn't even realize, because
Yeah.
the idea so washed.
Yeah.
My whole being was washed over by that idea, that it was like this bubble around me, and
Yeah.
nothing else was could permeate into that bubble. It was so amazing for me. So
Yeah.
it was a beautiful time of creation.
Yeah.
And so the Sufi project was born. Was I worried as to how
I
people?
love that you started with you singing Amazing Grace at a time in your life where it meant something very specific to you, right? It was a time where it really, you identified with that a lot, and that's how it all came together. That's really beautiful.
And the first concert, I mean, people ask me often, were you worried about how people would
Yeah.
respond? And I don't think I was. And I don't think I was worried, because I
Yeah.
wasn't doing it to please people. I was doing it because I had to tell my truth. And I had created this. I
Yeah.
was ready to put it there. I don't think I even thought about the judgment or the reception. And when we got a standing ovation, I remember there was a lady who said, old lady said, straight from your lips to God's
God,
heart or God's ear.
God,
I just wept,
yeah.
because I was like, you heard me. That's all I
Yeah.
thought. I thought you heard me.
Yeah.
And so the gospel project took off really well. And it was just incredible, the way we've been able to travel with it to, I think, 30 countries. We've had the most incredible reception.
I missed. I'm so sad about that you performed in Hong Kong, and I missed that. You even performed in Sydney before I came to Sydney.
So, and Sydney was so glorious. I can't tell you. I mean, we the Sydney Opera House, and then I think 10 days later we were in Canberra, and so many of the people in the audience looked familiar, and I thought, I'm just now imagining that I know these people. Came to
Wow.
me and they said, we heard you in Sydney, and we've driven to
And
Canberra.
I travel.
I
Oh
was
my God, are you serious?
like,
Wow.
amazing is this? You heard me 10 days ago. It's not even like I've come back after a year and you thought, okay, I
Yeah.
want to hear. But it touched them enough to want to come back. So amazing reception of the music, amazing things that people say. I mean, I'm just sharing with you one of the last ones that I heard. It was a
Yeah.
young girl come up to me at the end of a concert, and she said to me, she said, I just want to tell you that I know why I can never be an atheist. And I looked at her surprised and I said, why? She said, because I felt God today. And
Wow.
I just thought,
My God.
you know,
Wow.
I felt so blessed to
Yeah.
be able to have the gift. And I honestly always say it's the greatest gift to have art in your life, to have the gift of music in my life, to be able to tell my truth and to not conform, because I'm not
Yeah.
conforming,
Yeah.
and to still be able to reach people. Thank you, Nishad. I just saw that. We love Jodhpur, by the way. Such an amazing
Yeah.
for us. So
And
it's been
I'd love to share actually, Sonam, again, I'm finding so many parallels in your journey. I started MeMeraki when my dad had cancer actually as well. And he was, I was literally in the hospital every day with him. And I think MeMeraki is what kept me sane. Like just looking at the beauty of, the work of our artists every day, seeing, like, yeah, seeing colors, seeing, the commitment with which they were practicing their art, that the dedication and joy that goes into it, I think that actually it kept me sane. So I definitely I feel very deeply, like it really resonates with me how you've described your journey actually, and it's beautiful. But I'd love to also know that, I mean, you've shared some of the reactions from people which are honestly like so powerful, but what was it like collaborating with such a diverse set of musicians as well? How did you bring them together, and what
so
has that been like?
it was so amazing. Before I tell you about that, I just want to say hi to my childhood friend
Yeah.
Kajal, who's Kaju.
Yeah.
Uh, this is what's lovely about Instagram lives. You can just quickly do this stuff as well. Kaju's traveled a lot she managed me for a while as well. So I think it's important to validate how important she is to me as well. But the coming together of the musicians was something I remember just the day or two before the concert. I looked at the room while we were rehearsing and I was like, oh my God, we all belong to different religions, and how wonderful a testament this. So it wasn't something that was done because I thought it's a good game plan, or like, oh, this will be a good marketing. It was not done like that. It was done.
It.
It was just, I believe the universe conspired to do that, to bring us
Yeah.
together. But what in the journey since then has happened is we have had the ability, because I think we have not followed rules of, and I know that it's been, in fact, and I can say this safely, like, I worked with traditional musicians. So there have been times when I would tell my tabla player, ki isko aise try karte hain. Now they are gharanedar, and they look at
Yeah.
me and I'm not gharanedar. I mean, the only gharana I come from is the Kalra gharana, you know what I mean? My parents. But I would say, look, try it. Or I would say to my Sarangi player, who's so incredible, that, try it. But the fact is, I have to give them credit in every single one of them was open with a little bit of a nudge. And,
Yeah.
women are doing, men especially, when they can convince them.
Yeah.
I often joke about how I bully this bunch of boys. And so, women power all the way. But it was really exciting, I think, for them also to realize, which is something you do as well, right? When you take a and you convert it into a beautiful handbag, which they would never have imagined. You take a pitchwai or go on that, or you take that kind of art. So I think that it's important. Just like when I work with, say, a new producer, I may be fixed in my ways of working, and I may say I don't want to try it like, but I think we all need, and that's the great thing about collaboration, is that collaboration pushes you to push the boundaries a little bit more than you would have done on your own. And in this collaboration, I believe that the greatest art is born, right? Because through conversation, and a collaboration is what? Collaboration is conversation, it's dialogue, it's an exchange, it's a shooting down of ideas, and then a kind of reaching a middle point and saying, yes, this does work. And I've always been a firm believer of let's do. So a lot
Yeah.
of what I find, and this is something that personally I get very frustrated when everybody sits and talks academically. Okay? No, this can't work, but isko aise. I'm like, बातें कम, काम ज़्यादा, करते हैं.
Yeah.
करके
Yeah.
समझ में आएगा कि हुआ कि नहीं. Because so much is preconceived notions, and until you do, and I think this again comes from theater, where we
Yeah.
would improvise a scene to see if it worked. Until you, because some things can sound like it doesn't work, but
Yeah.
when it's there, you feel the tears rolling down your face, or you get those, I call them truth bumps and not goosebumps. When you get those, then you know that this is beyond rational, it's beyond logic. And that's what art is. Again, it's emotion, right? It's not logic, it's not rational. You can describe a great artist's work, I mean, Picasso's work, if you were to describe it, No, right? I mean, you could describe anything. You could
Yeah.
describe, and I often say this, then my example to my musicians will also be like, that you can hear a pitch perfect voice and you can just be left cold saying, huh, fine.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
be walking by someone on the street, a poor, broken, homeless person who's singing with totally out of key, but you can just
Yeah.
be mesmerized and held
Yeah.
because you feel that person's story or their heart or their life. So that to me is art, right? So my definition of art is not necessarily beauty, but truth.
Truth.
Um,
Yeah.
Collaboration for me is really exciting. I still continue to collaborate with a lot of people. We got a chance to collaborate in Australia with a didgeridoo player, and we involved him, so
Nice.
he played stage with our traditional work, and we did a lovely, like a tal vadya sawal jawab with him, which was very exciting. We did something with an Argentinian musician now. We do a lot of work with the Rajasthani musicians. It's just really exciting. I mean, and the idea is, at least for me, is that every piece that we create
Yeah.
and push boundaries a little bit. I mean, when
The perfectionism though, right? Like to try, but like, and then to get it perfect, that's a difficult balance to always
that's
strike as well.
that that's the thing that kind of,
Yeah.
if I was to tell you the truth, I have about 13 or 14 songs that have been sitting in the studio for the last, and I'm not lying when I say this, 8 years.
Oh my God.
Over the years. But the reason they don't get finished is this perfectionism. Is like I'll go back to them and I'll say, no, I don't like how this is signed. It's not. But I've also learned. I've
Yeah,
learned
we can
to go a little that because I really believe that I'm in no hurry. I
yeah.
don't have where to get to. I
Yeah.
don't need to get to a place where I go and say because I have to tick a box. I've released 100 songs and I'm the most prolific uh,
Yeah.
creator of music. I mean, if you'll see my Instagram page as well, people ask me, why don't you get onto Instagram and sing?
Yeah. Yeah.
On paper, that sounds like a great idea. And I can see the logic of it and I see how
Yeah.
it works for us. But I have 14,900 followers and I'm okay because I feel like I'm just going to tell my story whenever I feel like telling it,
Yeah.
whatever, whether that's easy, whatever. I don't have any other than where I am right now.
That's beautiful. But yeah, I mean, I can see I need to learn some of that for sure because I definitely feel like I'm on, oh my God, this needs to be done. This. So I think I'm definitely like, my team gets very hassled with me because I'm not a perfectionist. I'm the person who's like, speed over perfection. Let's launch this. Let's launch this. They're like, no, we have to get this perfect. So yeah, I definitely need to learn a bit more of that patience and a bit more of, that something does need to be,
I
this
think
art.
it's about trusting in the process, trusting that wherever you're going to get to wherever you're meant to be.
Yeah.
And no,
Yeah.
I do agree with you that sometimes you have to push yourself. But like, for example, with Alfat, now Alfat had sat in the studio for 3 or 4 years, literally just sat there. And everyone was like, musicians are like, why don't you release? I'm like, abhi theek nahi, abhi theek nahi, abhi theek nahi. Suddenly one day I woke up and in the middle of the night,
Yeah.
and I thought, I have to finish this song in 3 days. Some random, um, like
Yeah.
alarm went off in my head. That morning at 6, so this happened at about 3:30. I'm awake. I can't sleep because now I've got this kira. And then at 6, I start calling producers and directors, like not producers, but directors who can shoot the video. I mean, firstly, I thought they must have thought I was mad calling them at 6 in the morning. In that day, by 10 o'clock, I went and I found the place that we were going to shoot it. By the end of the night, I had closed on the director. Then the same day, I'd rung up Ashish, who had mixed our song from Coke Studio, Ashish Manchanda from Bombay. And I said, I'm sending you this song to mix.
Yeah.
Because I think I'd been unhappy with the mix and I hadn't realized it because I had left
Yeah.
on the back burner. And suddenly, in 3 days, my song was finished, mastered, mixed. I had sat on an all-night edit and I released it. So, I mean, I don't know what it is about me, but maybe it was under pressure, but I'll get there, but I've decided not to try. I tried really hard to change it, and now I've decided just to accept this is who I am. This is the way I work in
Yeah.
a crazy, mad, irrational fashion.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's yeah. I mean, it's part of your truth as well.
Also,
But
part of it,
yeah,
right? There's no love.
absolutely. So, I mean, you told us, I didn't know this actually, that you mentioned that, you actually pursued art for a while as well. So I guess that explains the connection with Indian art as well. And of course, like you said, I mean, art is not just, performing arts is separate, being a musician is separate, and arts is separate. But would love to just explore a bit more about, what draws you to traditional art specifically as well, because I do know you have some beautiful pitchwais in your home. I've seen you sent us a beautiful picture of a pitchwai with one of our bags when you'd gotten one, but would love to explore that,
I
know a
also have
bit more.
pitchwai of the month of February of Shringar. So it's 30 days. It was given
Yeah.
to me as a gift by my friend. But no, I think I've always been drawn to art. I mean, I drew as a child, so obviously I went to art school and I took applied art, but I also had sculpture as one of my subjects. I did graphic design in school when you could choose 5 subjects. I was one of the lucky people who actually got to choose graphic design instead of history and do political science. So I'm humanities. But
Interesting.
yeah, my mother loved art. My
Yeah.
parents were both aesthetes in some way. I mean, the house was filled with beauty. And I think we just grew up appreciating that beauty. I mean, both my sisters love art as well. Nonita is, Nonita. So yeah,
I'm
so
hoping to have a heart conversation with us well at some point.
but for me, I think, and I think that again, I sound repetitive here, but I think my heart has always been ridiculously soft. And therefore I feel everything deeply. And it was something I would often, like as a child, I would think that I cried too much or I felt things too much and I wanted to change that. And then as I started to grow older, I realized that that was my greatest strength, that
Yeah.
I can feel, and
Yeah.
in fact, very often when I do this partition performance, which I'm sure we'll
Yeah.
talk about, but even when I was doing Binodini, there used to be a scene where I would be sacrificed and killed. And I used to weep through that scene in the
Yeah.
play. And I remember thinking to myself that the day I don't cry for real is the day I'll give up this
Yeah.
play. So even when I do my music, when I don't feel it for real, I'll stop. I'll stop doing it, I think. So the same thing. So I think that open heart and the ability to see
Yeah.
and to look at a piece of a painting and to feel that person's soul or what would they have thought,
Yeah.
that was in from the time I was a child. I absolutely I have this weakness for Indian handicraft, Indian art, whether it's a beautiful fabric or whether like
Yeah.
even like magic of mushroom, for example, that's cotton on one side. And so to me, these things are magical. The
It would.
fine. I love jewelry. I think it's so beautiful. In fact, I remember going to Mexico and I'd heard that silver jewelry in Mexico is beautiful. And I remember coming back thinking, my God, I mean, the Indians are like 5,000 times more skilled because have we have such a wealth of art everywhere. Whether you go to Kutch and you see that fine embroidery, or you look at Kalra, or you look at like the art, different art forms. It's just the Kashmiri when they paint. I mean, everything is so beautiful. How can you not be moved? So yes, I do love having a lot of art in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, when I looked at my living room,
Particular.
sorry,
Any
I looked.
particular in traditional Indian art, handicrafts, and why?
So I do love calligraphy a lot. I do love pitchwise. I have to say I like the ones that, in fact, the Shringara I was talking about are pen and ink drawings, and I find them very fascinating because they're quite different
Yeah.
from the typical. I think it's also amazing. Like when I went to art school, we learned to paint with a squirrel hairbrush as well, and
Yeah.
again, fascinating. So I do love pitchwai art. I find Gond art very, very beautiful also because of the themes they choose, Worldly is great fun because to me as a child, I remember thinking these were the coolest stick figures I'd ever seen. But the fascination,
Yeah.
yeah. For
The
me,
geometry, I've actually written a whole article about it, the geometry of Varli art.
geometry. And, there's a beautiful piece of art that I'm looking at. It's very interesting. And I will try and send you a picture of it. It was given to me, a very interesting style of art. It's an ekomkar that was given to Sangraha, which works with chicken curry to create art now. So it's canvas which has embroidery all over it, and it's printed. So it has the pehli pori of the Sikh prayer. Bits of it are embroidered. This car is embroidered in this shape, but when you look at it from where I'm looking at it now, it's the face of Guru Nanak, and it's the first time I realized that the Ikumkar if written forms the turban, can form the bird. And so it's spectacularly beautiful, So to me, the layers of art, I love Madhvi Parikh's art as well because she's taken, she does such interesting work. So, I mean, there is
beautiful sort of display of her work basically through the Dior collaboration as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was or Madhvi's.
I think it was Madhvi Parekh as well, right?
Madhvi works in a more sort of Gond. I don't know exactly what her style is called, but Madhvi does that kind of folk art. But, so to me, I think I like, again, I think for me, it's always about the stories. Whether it's the story your music tells, whether it's the story your fabric tells, whether it's the story your painting tells. And I always feel like I think of what the person would have thought. What would they have been wanting to do, like when they were creating that art. So I've always been drawn to it. And I love Indian handicrafts. I also think our fabrics are so beautiful. And then you put embroidery on them or you create like a printing technique and you're just like, oh my God. So there's too much magic in India.
That is so true, actually. I mean, and yeah, I mean, we have actually tried to do research around it. So unofficially, India has over 3,000 styles of heritage arts and crafts. So that's a very big number. While the census says that there's about 7 to 8 million artisans in the country, but unofficially, again, there are more than 200 million people employed in the craft. It's pretty
Wow.
much the employment generator in the country, right? So, yeah, I mean, it really doesn't get the kind of attention that it should be getting.
It doesn't get the kind of funding as well. So that's my basic like grouse, even when COVID hit.
Yeah.
I mean, firstly, and I don't know if the rest of the arts world, to a large degree, the rest of the arts world, we were not last on the list of non-services.
Yeah.
And I just thought, India can wake up, and what did we survive lockdown through? Through art, right? Whether or art or creating art or being exposed, what helped us keep our sanity. So I don't think that most of our traditional crafts get enough fun. I mean, our traditional music doesn't get enough fun.
Absolutely. And I mean, we often dream about this actually, that, beyond just arts and crafts, we'd love to cover folk music, folk instruments, the traditional foods from different parts of India. Basically, like, our dream is that we want to cover heritage from across the, in all its, shape and form, basically from across the country.
Board, as that's a very popular term on Instagram, so I'm seeing in your future board a MeMeraki,
yeah.
of folk influences, I'm going to say, because it's going to cover everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what we envision actually. But and at some point maybe globally as well, that we can cover heritage arts and crafts globally. But honestly, that's such a long way off. There's just so much to do in India. But yeah, I mean, this has honestly been such a beautiful conversation. But before we end, I'd love for everyone to know a bit more about your new album that's coming up, Stories of Partition, and again, how did that come about? What are you hoping to do with this project?
So what I've already done? So this kind of born now 6-7 years ago, but the idea happened many years ago. I would say more than 10 years ago. It opened the gates of the Wagah border for Laali. And a lot of people were allowed to come across the border. And there was a man who'd come across with his daughter on his shoulders, or it was his daughter, holding a placard which said, akhiyaan di Laali, dasdi roye, assi roye, tussi. It said, the redness in your eyes shows that you cried and so did we. And I don't know what it was about. I mean, truth, mom, I tell you.
Yeah.
With me. And it made me weep every time I would think about it. Every time I would relate it to a friend, even now when I'm telling you, I get emotional. It was such a beautiful, all-encompassing for me line.
Yeah, it is.
And I mean, it then took me many years, and it would stay in the back of my head, like the back burner. I was until one day I said, okay, I'm going to do something. So I got in touch with a friend, a visual artist, Gopika Chofla, also a really dear friend, and we've worked together. And I said, okay, I want to do this. And then it was so special because I went in there knowing that I wanted to do a performance. So I poetry of poets of that time. I started then researching, and as I researched, I found a video archive that I got some videos from, and then I sort of watched it build a Lego set. In this case, I didn't know where I was going, but I was being led by all the information I was gathering, and it has turned out to be one of the most. I mean, I say it is such a moving performance, and it's not because I've made it or anything, but because of all the stuff, all the beauty that we managed to curate into that performance. So I have an installation on stage created, which is called the line. It's 3 trunks together, has this line blood, which is cloth, which comes through and divides the audience.
Oh,
I have,
wow.
she's for me because I have a video screen. So testimonials of survivors and an actor on stage who relates some of the real stories that happen. And it's interesting, as it started to build, it became a triangular forming. So it was so exciting for me because I broke the lines. I went from singing live
Yeah.
to spoken word voice actor to the video being a part of that. Sometimes the video ends in one sentence and it up. So it's really special. And it
Wow.
became
Yeah.
a really powerful thing. And then the story it eventually took was one of talking of pain, of what happened, into the good things that they were, the strengths they were, the friendships, that's the beliefs and the connections they still are. And it
Yeah.
with a message of hope saying, let's keep the dialogue open. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Ki
Yeah.
guftagu band na ho, you know, because if
Yeah.
that's the fact that you had a shared history, if you
Yeah.
can accept that you had a shared grief, then that takes away so much of the negativity. That takes away so much of the narrative that's portrayed. And I can tell you, it's been so amazing. I mean, I've performed this now quite a few places. And one of the most interesting was Ashoka University. The teacher said, will you come and do it? And I thought, you're not going to understand it. A lot of poetry is in Urdu and Punjabi, even though I have English subtitles for every.
Okay. Yeah.
We had standing ovation from those children for 15 minutes. The performance is an hour and a half long. I had to stay back in the college for an hour and a half to talk to these kids because they were saying, we did not know in our country, or our whole mindset has. There was another woman who came to a Habitat Center performance in Delhi, and she wrote me a lovely mail saying, my parents have gone through this. And I wanted to tell you, they'd never spoken to me about it. She said, after
Yeah.
your performance, they said to me, she said they were so bitter about it, they never talked. They said, someone has said they saw it on a Stein. I'm just reading the comments. At Stein
Yeah.
Auditorium. Was it Stein? They said that my parents said to me at the end of your performance, "Ab hum bajaye ki dusri taraf bhi kya hua?"
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if we can do that, if we can honor these oral histories, and I always say, like oral histories are so much more valid than
Yeah.
academic. And we know that even more
There's
now.
someone. Yeah. Yeah.
An Indian book text. So the fact is, but it's also important to honor these real life stories. So for me, many reasons, but long story. I wanted to put it together because I think the one common thread I find through all my art, through all my music, is that I want people to start understanding that the greatest religion is the religion of humanity. You know, for me, and that love is really what we all want at the end of
Yeah.
the day. Despite the differences, we all want to live happily, peacefully, most of us, right?
Yeah.
So if we can just start, and you know, I always say, if we can stop tolerating, because tolerance is such a great word that I likes to use,
Yeah.
but stop tolerating.
Accepting. I was reading that in one of your write-ups. Yeah.
If we can start just making allowances for our differences, we can
Yeah.
start respecting our uniqueness, and we can start thinking of just stepping into the other shoes to see other perspectives. Then, you
Yeah.
know, hatred, these narratives can change. And I want my music to make, I don't go away saying, bada acha gaya ya bahut bura gaya, whatever. But even like yesterday, I did a concert which was just pure Sufi music, and it was the more traditional, better known music. That even there, I share with the audience what the text means,
Yeah.
um,
Which is
contextually, but also what it means to me, because I'm happy to share my perspective. And I think
Yeah.
that what's nice is people go away thinking either that they've learned something, or they've
Yeah.
realized that they heard, they finally understood what the text
Understood
also.
what? Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it was
Exactly.
just, or maybe it changed you in the minutest way. It changed what you think. So if you
Yeah.
can having thought at the end of my concert, or having listened to one of the music,
Yeah.
then for me that's all I need.
Absolutely. That's so beautiful. And yeah, people, I'm reading some of the comments as well. Humanity above everything. Absolutely. And I think that's again the common thread with everything that we are trying to do as well, right? That, art connects everyone. We find so much similarity in art across the length and breadth of India. The stories are so similar. It's all about man's connection with nature, with man's connection with the community, with each other, and I mean, it's literally that same common thread everywhere, right? So
Language,
that's, yeah.
you know, it's also all art is able to
Yeah.
speak everyone. So there's no language.
Yeah.
I mean, we go stand in front of a painting and interpret it differently, move us differently. So, and that's the beauty of it. But it speaks to all of us, and we don't need the same language for it to speak to us. That's the beauty of,
Absolutely.
you know.
Yeah. And yeah, that's a beautiful note to end our conversation on as well. Honestly, like I didn't even realize we've exceeded by 15 minutes already, because this has been such a wonderful conversation. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I could keep on talking to you, and I hope we get to talk to you again. I hope we get to meet in person, and that we can get, both the Sufi Gospel Project as well as Stories of Partition, back to Australia. Fingers crossed. I hope you can visit soon. And for those of you, I watched one of your TED Talks today as well, which again, like it is the same, concept that religion is not God and God is not religion. It was a beautiful talk, actually. For those of you, I'd encourage everyone to watch that as well. And yeah, hoping to have you here in Sydney sometime soon.
And thank you for thinking of me to be part of this
No.
conversation. I hope
Thank you so much. This was totally our pleasure. I mean, I really enjoyed this conversation. It was wonderful. Please keep exploring, these beautiful concepts that you're exploring in your music. It's been absolutely wonderful.
and lots of
All
love,
right.
everyone.
Right. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you so much, everybody. Yes, everyone, please do leave your comments and do tell us who else you'd like us to chat with. And yeah, we can keep getting more people who inspire us here to chat with all of us. Thanks, Sonam.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.